Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Cosmic Owl Astrology with Louise Edington and Kathy Biehl, professional Aquarian. We're here with more political astrology, and holy heck, was I right about big earthquakes last week? But anyway, of all kinds. But Kathy will go over the news. But anyway, I'm Louise Edington, the Cosmic Owl, Cyberpunk Witch Priestess to the stars, feeling very spicy today. Obstinate, headstrong girl, Jane Austen. And because I'm fired up by what's happened in this country and the world. But anyway, I have a website, louiseeddington.com. I have two membership levels. I have the Spiral Codex, which is my more intensive, more advanced kind of level of membership. And I have the Spiral Weave, which is for a lighter touch for those that just want to come and learn more astrology once or twice a month. And I'm also offering a workshop, an intensive, a series immersion, CERES, based on my book. That's going to be March 7th, 8th. We've just about got everything ready for people to start registering, and there will be an early bird price. So watch for those links. Kathy.
Hey, I'm Kathy Biehl. My YouTube channel is Professional Aquarian. My website, empowermentunlimited.net, and I have a Patreon. Patreon.com/Kathy Biehl has multiple levels of membership benefits, including getting to ask me questions every month. I have with Donna Woodwell an interesting workshop on figuring out how this year's astrological energies are playing out in your individual chart. It's now available on recording, the workbook, and then there will be a follow-up live Q&A session in a couple of weeks. If you go to magicandmastery.com/write my story, or to my website, empowermentunlimited.net. There's a big orange bar, stripe, banner. Some people, for some reason, cannot see it. It's the only orange thing on the page. It actually says, purchase my workshop. Anyway, you go there. I know people are just, you can get it, and it is only $27. And it's loads of fun.
I did it last year and I have not got time to do it again this year. But I love the title of it, Write My Story, because I talk a lot about the point we're in now collectively, about we have the opportunity here to collectively write a new story too. So, and interesting that that person whose video we were watching earlier, Cassie, talked about the same thing. But anyway.
Yeah, and I'll just throw in, and we'll go into this in more detail. But we have phenomenal manifestation energy going on right now. Phenomenal. So as outraged or weirded out or sleepless as you are about anything that you perceive going on in the world, first off, don't be sure it's really what it looks like. But secondly, take some of that energy and direct it into, okay, what do I need to do to get my own life in order? This is the time to do it. And I'll get off my soapbox.
It really is. So just look forward. Don't curl up in a ball and think we're doomed, because we're not. I don't think we're doomed. And we'll talk to that a bit today.
Yep.
Kathy, let's go on with the news.
All right. So what I like to do is show news events that play out the astrology that Louise and I talk about. And I want to start with making a correction of something I said last week. Last week, I said that Mercury, which rules the mail and how we communicate and things going through the air. Anyway, it was making an aspect of dissolving aspect. And I said Denmark has stopped mail service. Correction, Denmark has stopped delivery of letters. It's still delivering parcels. So fixing that. All right. So we are coming off a stretch of time with conjunctions to the sun, which always bring clarity. Venus conjoining involves values and money. Mars, motives, aggression, the military, men. And later this month, Mercury, information, things that fly through the air, our thoughts, whatever, what we know to be true will make one. So hold on to these concepts. Okay. So we started the week moving into a Cancer full moon opposite a whole bunch of bodies in Capricorn. The
with
Department,
with with four out of balance planets. If people didn't watch last week,
so way
yeah.
out of the normal way of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
The Department of Justice, I think this is the story, and it's interesting. Neptune at the final degree of Pisces, it's the one that's being buried. Consider this the real story. The Department of Justice missed its production deadline for the Epstein documents it was supposed to give to the House Oversight Committee. Just missed it. No comment, no explanation. I think they're saying now that they won't be able to release most of them until after Trump is out of office. By the end of the week, so the arc, by right now, the House Oversight Committee has subpoenaed Epstein's buddy Lex Wexner, who owned a clothing line, I think Victoria's Secret,
Yeah, I
and
think it was.
they have subpoenaed Epstein's executors. So keep this in the forefront of your mind as everything else is going on. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So Cancer full moon on the United States sun opposite the triple conjunction. We said there would be issues of resources. My resources, your resources. The administration seized the president of Venezuela. The moon was also on the sun of Venezuela. And Trump has now claimed the right to have all of its oil. And he's now claiming that we have the right to go in and take Greenland, Cuba, Canada, Colombia. He's talking today about land raids in Mexico for drug cartels. And doing this has destroyed, or is destroying, it's gone, a post-World War II compact of how nations are supposed to work together. But he's pulled us out of it, basically. And there's more that's been going on with that this week. We've pulled out of 60 plus international organizations, half of which are UN groups, and many of which deal with climate change and climate change science. So hold that thought. As the triple conjunction was moving into opposition to Jupiter, which expands everything on top of everything being out of bounds, Louise warned there would be earthquakes, and there have been two biggies that we've noticed. I'm not saying there weren't more. 6.5 on the Richter scale in Mexico and 6.7 in the Philippines. Okay. During all this,
But
the White House.
also earthquakes in energy too, right?
Oh,
So,
and energy,
yeah.
definitely. But physical earthquakes.
Mm-hmm.
The White House website rewrote January 6 history to blame the Democrats and blame Mike Pence. However, the Senate finally hung its plaque honoring the Capitol Police that defended them. It's been something they've needed to hang for years. They finally hung it this week. Okay. Venus, woman, conjunct Mars, aggression in Capricorn, the state. With the sun, a male government agent murdered a woman driving an SUV. A mother, Jupiter, is the sun, young child. We'll talk about this more. But as Mars moved into conjunction with the sun, the mayor of Minneapolis tells ICE to get the fuck out of his city. The city police join the protesters, making noise outside the hotel where the ICE agents are staying. And of course, then Kristi Noem and Trump and Vance blame the woman who was shot. And the FBI has blocked local law enforcement from evidence. So this big power grab of all the Capricorn involved.
And the murderer has been ferreted away somewhere. So
Yeah, has been identified, but no one knows where he is, and or no one is saying where he is. And the district attorney for the county of where Minneapolis is saying they can still prosecute him. They will. The fact that the FBI says they're controlling the investigation doesn't matter. They can still prosecute him. All right. So leading out of this, Illinois Representative Robin Kelly is filing articles of impeachment against Kristi Noem. 3 articles. 1, saying she's willfully obstructed congressional oversight and withheld appropriate funds. 2, accusing her of compromising the due process of U.S. citizens and directing unconstitutional actions. More on that in a second. And a 3rd, alleging that she's abused her office for personal benefit and steered federal tax dollars to associates. I neglected to mention that the day after the shooting in Minneapolis, Noam took the mic and said that the agents were simply they were following the procedure they were trained in. And the next day in Portland, ICE shoots two protesters who were in the hospital. They didn't shoot them in the head and kill them dead yet. Yeah. Okay. Now, in a very weird playing out of all of this, but it still fits, if you think of Capricorn as meat and potatoes and traditional, well, the Health and Human Services has flipped the food pyramid to put beef and dairy at the top.
Not even vegetable proteins, you know. I mean,
okay.
to be fair, some of it was outdated, but there's a big old steak and a big carton of full fat milk at the top now.
Right. So it's not science, it's political ideology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Trump has now said, now there's a blatancy that is coming to the fore in everything that's happening. Trump has said he is handling all the money from Venezuela's oil, and he's not putting it in the U.S. banking system. He's putting it in offshore accounts. Let that settle in. Mm-hmm. Right. Again, full moon was in the resource access. My money, your money. And one of the houses, the House of Criminality. All right. The Senate has voted to advance invoking the War Powers Act to limit further action in Venezuela. Now, this act already exists, so Trump can't sign it or veto it or anything. The question is, we're invoking it. And I don't know, maybe forestalling something. Today, he has said, well, they're not going to have further military actions in Venezuela for now.
But he's been threatening to use the act for his own uses. This is just wild times. But anyway, yeah, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no. So that happened yesterday, and that was like a sea change, because that's been sitting around since December, and finally it moves. And then, wonder of wonder, miracle of miracles, the House passed a discharge petition to put the ACA subsidy extensions to a floor vote. There's Jupiter and Cancer. And the House approved a 3-year extension. So now it has to go to the Senate. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but I'm bringing it up for the symbolism and the fact that it also indicates we're not just capitulating. Okay.
And quite a lot of Republicans voted for it, right? Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. So two more things involving us, and then one more piece of global good news. Okay. 2 more things involving us. Trump issued a post on Truth Social. It's not an executive order, but he couldn't have done what I'm about to say by executive order either. Okay. So he posts a prohibition. He prohibits defense contractors from issuing dividends or stock buybacks, and he orders executive pay cuts so that we can put more money into our military. He has no authority to tell private industry what to do. But it fits the Sun conjunct Mars, like the executive thinks, I am king, here we go. Mm-hmm. He also, in a very long interview with the New York Times, and pay attention to this, he said he does not need international law, that, well, he'll follow it, but it depends on what you mean by international law. And he said the only thing that can stop him is his morality and his own mind. So he's made
he doesn't have either. So
I was thinking that, but also it's an on the surface blatancy that goes along with, oh, I'm going to handle the money and I'm putting it in an offshore account. They're so blatant. All right. Oh. Piece of good news, and then we'll go on to talking about what's coming up. On a positive note, this combination, Venus, Sun, Mars, opposite Jupiter and Cancer, has birthed an agreement of a bunch of governments coming together for mutual support. The EU and Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay have agreed to a free trade deal. Now, not all of the EU is on board with this. I understand France isn't happy with it, but the symbolism fits.
Yeah.
Symbolism fits. So it doesn't mean everybody's going to go to war with everybody else. There's also the potential in this of coming together and building new foundations and new structures.
New alliances as well. That's all that. Yeah.
That's the Venus. Yeah, new
Yeah.
alliances.
Yeah. Mhm. Was that, are we
That's
done?
it. I am
Oh,
done. I am really
wow.
done.
What a week. I mean, of course, there's been a lot more going on. Kathy's really only picked up the highlights, but I think all of that is kind of showing that we are in this kind of ending of these cycles. And I think it's good that that they're being so blatant now because we
Mhm.
see it. So, anyway, we're going to go a bit more in detail through the astrology than we have the last couple of weeks or so, only because there's an awful lot of aspects and that full moon was so crazy. But I'm doing it in the spirit of showing you the process. We've talked about all these cycles ending and how all these faster moving planets are moving towards the end of the zodiac. So I just want you, if the exact aspects kind of fry your brain, just look at the flow of the planets.
Mhm.
So I'm going to share the chart where we are right now, or a few minutes ago anyway. And we've just had the exact Mars Sun Cazimi conjunction. Venus would have been still at 19 degrees when that happened. You can see they're just 4 minutes apart now because the sun's moving away from Mars. This, this is kind of the beginning of the parting of this big triple conjunction, right? It's still not over, as you'll see, but it's going to start moving apart, and all these faster moving planets are now moving towards the end of Capricorn. They'll move through Aquarius, they'll move through Pisces, which is the last sign of the zodiac. So just kind of look at that flow, right? Oh, I just want to take Black Moon Lilith out because she's getting in the way. Anyway, so um she's more personal, I think, anyway. So, but she's still relevant, of course, but we can't look at everything. So here we are on the 9th. Earlier this morning, the sun was sextile to Nessus. Where is Nessus? Oh God, I thought I put him in. Honestly, Kathy couldn't get her sound working. It's
Yeah, and I have a laptop that won't let me type on it, and there's yeah.
I know. We're going through all these things. Let me just add Nessus and Pholus, those centaurs, because we have found them to be very significant in all of this. And if you remember, Nessus is revealing toxins and poisons and abuses of power and all kinds of things like that. So I'll just add Pholus and then get back to what I was saying. So this is today. So the sun earlier today was sextile to Nessus before the conjunction with Mars. So that kind of speaks to my mind of us seeing this gaslighting, this abuses of power, all this all the things Kathy was talking about. And then the sun was conjunct Mars exactly at 6:41 a.m. Eastern, but it's all kind of very big thing together. So, and now Venus is moving away from these two. They were all at the same degree, and Venus exactly opposes Jupiter. And with Chiron and Eris over in Aries, really we've got this cardinal T square very active this coming week. Okay. Especially kind of at the start, even though Jupiter's moving backwards, we are getting these activations of these Capricorn planets, the Aries planets, and Jupiter. So it's just another kind of big push for change and things coming to light and all those kind of things. Would you like to say any more, Cassie?
Oh, I would like to say that
Mm-hmm.
Chiron in Aries and Eris in Aries. Eris is Mars's sister. She's
Mm-hmm.
also a warrior goddess. Louise
Mm-hmm.
calls her a table tipper. She's the goddess of discord. Uh, there's something here about a
But she
wound.
stands up for outsiders, I would say. Okay. So,
Okay, yeah,
yeah,
but there's
yeah.
a wound that is being inflamed,
Oh,
and we
mm,
cannot ignore it, and people are speaking out and
Mhm.
doing things because of it. We're seeing with Nessus as part of it, also Nessus kind
Mm.
of feeding into this and flowing
Mhm.
into Jupiter. Jupiter's moving into an exact trine with Nessus as it goes
Mhm.
backwards. There'll be, I don't know if you've noticed, maybe you haven't, massive people taking to the streets in Iran right now,
Mhm.
and people taking to the streets all over the US uh,
Mhm.
over what ICE has been up to, not just Minneapolis, a very wealthy district in Houston, of all places,
Mm.
at like a luxury mall, had a huge showing, and New York City, where Kristi Noem had the lack of sense of showing up, massive protests in the
Mm.
street, and so far people are just standing there. The protesters
Yeah.
are not violent at all. So there's an activation. You're going to hear the word activation a lot from us in this video. There's an activation
Mm.
happening of people going, that's it.
Had
That's it.
enough.
No more.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So on to tomorrow. I'm just going to go day by day and not get the aspects exact, but look at this. The moon moves into Libra and the sun comes up and opposes Jupiter and starts to square Chiron and Eris. But this forms a cardinal grand cross pretty briefly. But the moon is the people, remember? And the moon is in the sign of justice and, harmony and balance, but literal scales of justice as well. And, another big activation, a huge activation of seeing what we've seen and saying, no, 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 this is not right. That's just how it all really feels to me, of people really starting to wake up. And I see more people not so much fighting on social media, but all these people that are saying she deserved it. Speaking of Renee Good, people are actually quoting the law to them now and just saying, no, this is not what happened. No, because Kirsty Nome just lied outright about the whole thing, about what happened. We've seen it. We've got video evidence. Anyway, can tell I'm a bit fired up about this. Kathy, go on.
Well, Cardinal Grand
Mm,
Cross, right? A Grand
mm,
Cross has pulls us in multiple directions, and there's
mm,
something very simultaneously motivating and initiating and brittle
mhm,
about a Cardinal Grand Cross. And it is entirely possible that there will be an event that occurs
mm.
that just breaks people
And that's tomorrow.
tomorrow.
Oh. And because of Jupiter's presence, and to go back to last week, Jupiter is still not exactly at its closest to Earth, but it's opposing the Sun, which means it's close to Earth. This is big, this bit energy is big. People's emotions are riled up about the whole thing. And, this is people have had enough, and more people have had enough, I think. So, yeah. Anything else before I talk about the other aspects tomorrow? Mars follows the Sun and opposes Jupiter right after the Sun. The Sun opposes Jupiter 3:42 a.m. Mars opposes Jupiter 9:25 a.m. But then at 10:48 a.m., the Moon squares the Sun, and we have the last quarter moon, which is the crisis in consciousness phase of the Moon. So another cycle ending, right?
And what I will add to that is to
Mm,
remind people that I started the news roundup with
mm,
the Department of Justice missing the Epstein files
mm,
deadline
mm,
and the House Oversight Committee um,
mm,
subpoenaing people who are really close. There may be something tomorrow that is actually motivated. There may be an
mm.
overnight action that is motivated by attempting to further bury that story.
I thought the oversight committee did something else as well. But anyway,
Oh, they may have. Those are
mm,
the two things I got that
yeah.
they issued those subpoenas.
There's a lot to keep up with. And I only heard it in passing from an interview on TV. Anyway, on to January the 11th, and the moon is now waning. We're heading towards the new moon. We're only going to go as far as the new moon because there's so much going on. But Venus has now moved to 22 degrees and squares Chiron. And so that's exact. And so values, people, alliances, value, money as well. Chiron, the wound being revealed. Chiron's stationed direct on January the 2nd. So it's not moved very far. So we've still got, a lot of that crack where the light gets in kind of energy, the Chiron pointing the light into the big wound that's going on. And so that's happening. But then later, before I let Kathy kind of go in, 9:59 p.m. on the 11th, Eris stations direct. So she is stationed direct now as we record this. And state planetary, slow moving planetary station points are really potent. Another big turning point, right? Yeah.
And I would think, well, I'm going to focus on Venus in Capricorn here for a minute, since she's making direct aspects here. Venus in Capricorn is real no nonsense. It's nitty gritty, bottom line. What's the reality? And it wants durability. It wants reliability. It wants something that's going to grow. I'm always jokingly saying this is Santa baby energy. It wants something of value that it can take to the bank. So there is a focus here on long-term ramifications. What are we building? What are we heading toward? And a willingness to say, no, course correction. This is not where we're going.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I would, to go back to my Venus star point work that I'm
Mm.
certified in, I would love to remind everybody that this was the what's called the superior or exterior Cazimi with Venus on the other side of the sun. She is now moving into her evening star phase, which is love, peace, and I really think peace will come, but we're not there yet. So she's looking at it in her very receptive love goddess phase and saying, we've had enough of this, in other words. So,
Yeah, she doesn't want her valuable toys messed with. She wants her
no,
beautiful things to be in place.
yeah. January the 12th, Sun will come up and square Chiron. There is now direct. You see that? We've still got this cardinal T square in play, though it's starting to move apart because Jupiter's retrograde, but it's still potent all week. I'm going to say right to you'll see it fade apart, these red lines here as the week goes on. So it's really kind of more of the same, but with the sun squaring Chiron, that's the sun's big old light shining the light on this, the wound and the medicine, what we can do about it, Chiron. So,
We don't normally pay attention to the moon's movements unless it's one of the four major points. But I'm going to just point out that the moon in Scorpio, a really intense time, is moving into, it's in an opportunity aspect to Mercury in Capricorn, and it's moving into a trine, which is direct current with Nessus up there in the 11th. And I am thinking
and
this
Jupiter.
and
So
Jupiter,
another,
exactly.
yeah, another
Yes.
water grand trine.
So there could be a determined going deep, deep, deep into crimes and a scandal and corruption and things that we have. This investigation getting really, really big. Now we're in a phase of a lot of people being eyes on the ground. Okay, because of social media, people have so much at their disposal with cameras in every phone, etc. So there could be something that comes up and is communicated, Mercury, about what the government has been up to, or somebody in power has been up to. And
And
it
there
could
could
be a flash in the pan kind of thing, like, whoa, where did that come from? Shoot, because the moon moves quickly.
And there could be like more witnesses coming forward for the
Yes.
murder of Renee as well, and things like that. I saw one on the news last night who was an eyewitness and took some video. She wasn't even involved in kind of like being an observer of ice. So, I think there could be more videos come forward, more people speaking out, because there was a lot of people there. So, a lot of
And
witnesses, right?
this could be also this could have remember what I said the first framing story of the week was this could be
Hmm.
a moment where whoa, somebody just dumps a bunch of stuff about
Mm.
the thing that he doesn't want us to talk about.
Yep. It could even be somebody saying, I've had enough. I'm going to name some names here. Can hope. Anyway, some of his friends. Anyway, sorry, I'm not. I have had enough. I'm not being kind at all to him anymore because I've had enough. But it's more about more than him as well. I would like to remind people. So on to January the 13th. We haven't got many days to go through, but so January the 13th, I'll just mention that Venus, because she is moving fast, you can see on my software here. So she's pulling away from the sun and she follows that square to Chiron and squares Eris, the table turner. And for me, she's still at her station point, Eris. And yes, she was the sister of Ares. She was said to roam the battlefield after battle and bathe in the blood of the battle. I always read that as showing the horrors of what we do to each other, right? I don't see it as her taking part in the battle. And also in the myth, she threw in the apple of discord to the elites, the gods and goddesses at a wedding. She didn't actually do anything other than throw the apple in. Then they did the fighting and the warring that took down um, the Trojan War that took down the city of Troy. I just think she is the pot stirrer, the
Mhm.
instigator, right?
Instigator,
So,
right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so you're going to see Venus square Eris, Eris still at her station point, the sun's coming up, you know, all of this is more pot stirring, let's just say. Anything else from you?
Well, notice that the moon at this
Mm,
point is still in that really intense secret crime perceptive place of
mm-hmm.
Scorpio. And at this point, it is flowing right into Saturn in Pisces. Um, yeah.
But also making a T square to Pallas Athena, the justice warrior, and opposing Uranus, the great awakener in many ways, or revolutionary, whatever, at the degree Uranus is about to station direct at. Potent degree again. And this is in the sign of secrets and hidden things and power and manipulation, right? The moon.
well,
Hmm.
and as she moves out of that sign, she's also going to make an aspect to Neptune in Pisces, which is all of the gaslighting that goes on.
Hmm.
So there could be something coming out about somebody's mental state that has been hidden. I mean, it's been obvious to a bunch of us,
Oh.
but there could be something suddenly coming out with a person going, okay,
Mm.
here's the proof.
We're actually seeing more YouTube videos of people who work with people with dementia and stuff talking about it, so you can look them up yourself. But also, I would say referring to gaslighting, the gaslighting that's happening over this murder and all the things around it. The painting of her as some radical leftist kind of whatever. Her actual story doesn't portray that at all. So, and her family have talked about what she was like, and she was not perfect, of course, but the gaslighting immediately. Kirsty Nome was on there saying that she deserved it, basically, that she and all the followers have bought it, but I think some of them will start to see that Kirsty Nome's just lying flat out, basically.
Well, I am compelled to insert here that there is
Mm.
case law that
Yeah.
prohibits police officers from
Hmm.
shooting into a car. in
and
motion.
from demanding her to get out of the car. They had
Well,
no
the second
reason.
part is these people are not police officers.
Hmm.
So they're in immigration enforcement officials. They are not police officers. So even if they were police officers, it was
Hmm.
illegal to shoot into a moving car. And they didn't even, well, at any rate, so there's a whole lot more going on here. Is my
Oh, there
lawyer is
is.
coming up. She's not here often, but when she shows up,
And
she's really hurt.
you'll see people posting the case law in multiple comments if you're online. So you can go and find that and use it when you see somebody saying she deserved it because they did very illegal actions here. So and then
Mhm.
still on the 13th, Mars now comes up and squares Chiron. So we've had Venus square, Sun square, Mars square. And of course, Mars is the ruler or guide for the sign of Aries. And I always think of Aries Capricorn aspects being really pushy,
Mhm.
because they're
Mhm.
both horned kind of creatures, they're symbols. And it's kind of can be lockheads kind of things, but it's also very pushy in always from both sides. And Mars is said to be exalted in Capricorn, so it can be extra pushy in Capricorn too. So you're likely to see the regime being very pushy, but also others. So what would you say about
No,
that?
yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Mercury has been a bit quiet. We've mentioned a Mercury in response in with the moon at some points. But Mercury then joins the party, comes up to this area of the chart, and sextiles Nessus. And to my mind, that is big news coming out, you know, um, and more revelations and more kind of people's clouds kind of parting of people seeing all this lying and gaslighting and toxicity and abuses of power. So, cool. Yeah, I'm sure you have something to add to that.
Oh no,
No?
let's go on.
No? Okay, on to the 14th. Mercury then opposes Jupiter, so it's big news, right? So building on that aspect to Nessus, and the Sun squares Eris, the table turner. So I'm not going to repeat all I said, but the Moon has now moved in the waning moon as we go towards this new moon. The moon is about to lose light and go into the 3-day no moon phase, but the moon, the people in a mundane chart, moves into the sign of truth and true freedom, and truths are gonna come out. And the
That's a
moon
very
squares the
active.
nodes, by the way.
Oh, it's a very active energy. Okay, so this is not,
Mm.
I'm going to sit and doom scroll. This is more people in the street, very possibly with this.
Hmm. But more people on the street, more people kind of calling their representatives, more people, saying, "Oh, I've had enough of this. I'm going to run for office or
Hmm.
whatever." Just more of all of it, right? Because
Hmm.
people want justice. I wouldn't be surprised because things have gone a bit quiet about Jack Smith again because of all the other stuff going on. He's kind of the chief prosecutor in a way. I wouldn't be surprised if kind of something about that is people start to go, okay, breathe. Now we can look at that report again and go, yeah. Anyway, we'll see.
Okay.
15th. I was just moving my paper down. Venus now moves up towards the end of the zodiac. Sorry, of Capricorn, and will sextile the ruling planet of Capricorn, Saturn, in Pisces. Kind of more kind of clouds clearing, more reality checks. I always see Venus and Saturn aspects of a bit of a slap around the face reality check kind of thing, especially when they're pretty much in a mutual reception because Venus is exalted in Pisces. So those two are really speaking to each other. So that could be a reality check around the Epstein files, women, more money things, the gaslighting that we've been having, and the mental state of a certain person.
Venus is
Kathy?
also making an exact trine or a direct current, unbroken flow
To on
to
the same day.
Uranus. Right. And
On
she, on the same day, and she rules
mhm,
Taurus, the sign that Uranus is in. So there's going to be economic shakeups, economic news, big economy. Oh my God, what happened? And some things involving women's bodies very
yeah.
strongly with Capricorn and um, uh, Taurus both being involved. And just put a pin in the back of it. Epstein's last girlfriend was a dentist, and and Capricorn rules bones, although it doesn't
It
rule the
does.
head, but it
And
rules
it does rule
bones.
teeth. It does
It
rule
rules
teeth.
teeth. Okay. And there's weird stuff about a dental chair on Epstein
Oh
Island. So
yeah.
just put in the back of your mind, there could be something really freaky that
Mm.
comes to light
Oh
involving that.
yes. Yeah. Okay. January the 16th. Mercury's back in the play again, following all these planets. And because Mercury is fast moving, Mercury is catching up to these. And these are all personal planets, right? And so Mercury is heading towards a Cazimi with the Sun too. But before that, Mercury joins the party and squares Chiron on the 16th. Wound medicine again, but news, people speaking out more, people revealing more. But on that same day, Mars squares Eris, so more table turning, and that's brother and sister kind of fighting each other, but also working together. I always see squares as having both positive push to do things, especially because Mars is moving towards Eris, right? So this is kind of a coming together and saying, "Oh no, had enough. Let let's change this." To me, that's what that says. And the moon moves into Capricorn as well on the 16th. So, and now we're heading towards that new moon. So, Kathy.
What I would say is because of the brother sister aspect of
Mm,
Mars and Eris, there could be some kind of confrontation involving an ally.
hmm Could be. But also one other thing, and I forgot somebody else's point, reminded me that both Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were born with a Venus-Mars conjunction, and these two were just conjunct and are following all these aspects. So that brings us back to those as well, because these aspects often play out by future
Well,
aspects.
okay, and since you say that, although they
Mm,
were very, very close,
mm.
Mars and Eris it does describe the two of them.
It does, very
Mhm.
much. Yep. 17th. Okay, nearly there, everybody. Before Venus dips into Aquarius, she will sextile Neptune at the very last degrees of the two signs, but also anaretic degrees are liminal spaces where you kind of look back to where you've been. So, in other words, Venus looking back in her what's happened while she's been in Capricorn, but Neptune also looking back to the last since 2011 and the two speaking to each other, both very similar in nature with the Pisces energy, because as I mentioned, Venus is exalted in Pisces. Neptune in its highest energy is kind of that agape type love in Pisces. So, this is a real kind of call to love, but also of interconnectedness, of just going, I've had enough. We'll look back at all that's happened, and now we've got to just come together and start to be kinder to each other. That's how it feels to me. But Kathy does the more, I'm all the airy fairy. Kathy's more like, this is going to mean money. This is going to, and it will mean
Well,
both. It will mean
it will
both.
mean
I'm not
both.
saying,
But
yeah,
but
yeah.
along those lines,
hmm
there is an upsurge right now
mm
building to this
mm
of people on media, on social media, preaching Neptune that the best form of resistance is creating community, is treating
Yes,
people as friends, is
yes.
finding points of commonality, is being with people and supporting them. And that Venus Neptune
Mm.
sextile will really drive that home.
It will, but almost exactly at the same time as that happens, and before Venus moves into Aquarius, the Sun will come up and sextile Saturn as well. So that's kind of more blocks being revealed, revealing like all this crap of what's been happening, and also mental states as well, and the institutions, how they've failed us, and all kinds of things like that. So this it's just kind of repeating and repeating, but this is very intense because they're all moving together.
And
Let
the
me just
sun is,
finish the aspects if I could, and then could you? Oh
okay,
no,
because
and
there's
no,
important
no,
one.
no. Say something because I was
The
going to say
square.
Mercury then squares Eris.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
No, no, no. There's a
Hmm.
trine from the sun to Uranus. While the sun is
Yeah,
sextiling Jupiter, it's trining Uranus. Uranus is basically staying at this degree until the middle of March.
it is,
So every
and
time
that
anybody,
aspect's later this day. So yeah, it's on my
yeah,
list. So
okay,
yeah,
okay, good.
yeah, yeah.
I'll
So
shut up.
yeah, no, no, it's fine. So yeah, the sun is basically forming this lovely mini grand trine really to Saturn, in the sign that Saturn rules, and this in the sign that Venus rules. This is very revolutionary energy, I would say, right? And very kind of breakdown but breakthrough kind of energy as well. So yeah. So it was good to point that out before I go the minutiae of the other ones. So then Mercury will square Eris. So I'm not going to go into great detail about that. We'll be repeating. But also Uranus will square off to Pallas Athena exactly. So this is, again, wise justice warrior right on the US moon, with Uranus squaring it, let's just say, and Uranus is going to sit at this degree, squaring the moon in the US chart for ages. And Pallas Athena is not that fast a mover either. So this is a major activation of the people in many ways. Right. Any more on that one?
What I'll just point out the
Mm,
process here is
mm,
as a body is moving out of Capricorn, once it hits the degree of 27, which Venus
mm,
already did, in this chart, the sun is there. What it's doing is it's having an opportunity aspect with Saturn in Pisces, and it's in a challenging, action demanding, well, no, it's in it flows naturally into shaking things up or
mm,
looking at things a different way or being liberated from something with
mm.
Uranus, and then one after another. So Venus did it, then the sun is doing it, then Mars action will do it, and
I
then
think Mercury will do it before
first,
Mars.
before that
Yeah.
one. Yeah, because it
Yeah.
moves at any rate.
Mm,
So there's a process of different areas of life that have been in a big cluster, then one
mm,
after another, uh, going through the same
mm.
resolution before they change, and then they're all going. Well, they're not all. There will be a final contact for most of them with
Mm.
Neptune because he's going to finally clear out.
And speaking of the process, just for people just looking at the patterns, we kind of started with this cardinal T square, which became a brief grand cross. And you can see those lines are fading. They are getting thinner and thinner. And look how strong these blue lines are. So we're kind of moving from the push for change to the more flowy opportunity aspects of what can we
Mm-hmm.
do about this, right? That's what I was thinking. So, and now Venus has moved into Aquarius, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But because I do want to mention that Pluto and Vesta are exactly conjunct on the 17th as well. And in terms of what we're talking about here, Vesta is the state, really, in the sign of humanitarianism and the collective and all kinds of things, groups of people, where the US moon is, and this is Pluto that is digging up the shadow but also transforming. So, yeah, there's a couple of other minor aspects I haven't mentioned. The moon opposes Jupiter, and Jupiter exactly trines Nessus, but we kind of talked about that in the flow of things too. So yeah, wild, right? Anything to add before we go to the new moon? And I will.
Pluto and Vesta conjunct in Aquarius could have a lot to do with the role that technology and technocrats
It
suddenly
could.
have in the steering of our country.
Yeah, exactly. And then we're going to finish on the new moon. So I'll just get the actual new moon exact. But before the new moon, Mercury will be conjunct Mars. So will drive action, conjunct communication, voice, news, speaking. So that's a big conjunction as well. And this is where Mercury starts to move ahead of Mars. Um, and the moon will, before the new moon, will conjunct Mars and will conjunct Mercury. So that's really another kind of big pile up that's happening together. And going back to that out of bounds things, I forgot to mention that Mercury's out of bounds to the 15th. So Mercury's back in bounds, but the moon's out of bounds again. And so, this has still got that powerful, potent, beyond the pale kind of energy. So, yeah, anything else on that one? There's some other aspects, but let's look at those after we just look at the new moon altogether. Mm-hmm.
This is so in the chart set for Washington, it's in the House of Allies and Open Enemies. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a real strong walking your talk or having thoughts come into physical being with Mars and
Mm-hmm.
Mercury together as part of this. So anything that is launched by the government around this is going to be really potent. That's thing one.
Oh,
And
yes.
thing two is, um, well, and it's in this opportunity aspect with Saturn and Neptune up there in the 10th house. We should be seeing incredibly Looney Tunes behavior, much, much, much more than we have seen. Okay, so no screaming, but a couple of other things. This new moon and Mars and Mercury with it, all kind of in a cluster, are flowing right into Uranus. So whatever this new beginning
Mm-hmm.
is taking into account changed circumstances and like differences in the economy or
Mm-hmm.
basic instability about a whole bunch of stuff. The final thing I'll throw in is this is two-thirds of the way through a sequence of new moons at the 28th degree of the sign, which is nearly the end of the energy. So it's very sophisticated in terms of as much as that sign could be. So this is like the
Mm-hmm.
Capricorniest of Capricorn new moons.
And
And
it's the fifth of seven at 28 degrees. I
right, yeah.
counted
So
them
it's
the other day. So,
so
yeah.
yeah, it started in October and it'll go
Mm-hmm.
into March. So
Yeah.
so this is part of a process of really huge clusters of energy,
Mm-hmm.
setting really huge new phases. And these clusters of planets, because you see how it's also grouped up in one spot, they're all moving in a giant chunk. Like, so now we're doing Capricorn, then they're going to move and move and move. So
Mm-hmm.
this is the moment that long-term long-term situations can be put in place. I say that for your own life. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if the trine to Uranus means that if something that we really don't like happens institutionally, maybe there's an inherent instability to it. That's a kind of Pollyannish way of looking at it, but it's possible with the Uranus as part of it.
But I always
Or,
think that that instability caused by Uranus happens, and we kind of, it's a bit of a wake up call again. It's
right.
about radical changing how we do things. So, but look at this mini grand trying to talk
Hmm.
about that. Just we can't really separate, I think, this new moon from the
Hmm.
aspects to Saturn and Neptune and Uranus. It's just a really, really potent um, new moon again. And it's a new moon, so it's new beginnings, but all these planets are closing cycles, the personal planets.
Hmm.
So it's also got a releasing, letting go kind of ending time, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's one other aspect I was going to mention. I think, which one was it? Um, series, my lovely series that I wrote my book on and been doing my workshop on. She's been pretty quiet this week, but she's now making this cardinal square to Pholus, Centaur Pholus at 11 Capricorn, which is, that inventory kind of cause and effect, kind of looking back and going, looking back over the history, our lives, I would say, in all kinds of things like that. And in this context we're talking about, this is more about the culture, the institutions. How have they supported our needs? And this square could reveal another thing of how it's not, something about around, it could be around food, but it could be around other things too. Because Ceres, the statue, is on a lot of government buildings. I've talked about that in
Hmm.
presentations and in my book. She's kind of a part of the institutions, really. So, mhm.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. All right. Let me just go to get how I can stop the share. Because we are going to look at Nicole Good's chart and the time of the murder. We're not doing it in the way sometimes astrologers do, of looking like what caused her death. But I just kind of always feel like, these people, their charts are active because, especially when it's a big turning point in history, which we feel it is. So I felt like it was a good thing to show her chart. Now, we don't have a time, so we don't know the exact degree of her moon, but it works in this chart. So I always do it midday. So, she's going to be a moon in Libra because at midday the moon is at 17 Libra. And at the time of shooting of the murder, Mars, Venus, and the Sun were at 17 Capricorn, squaring that moon and squaring her natal Eris. So that was forming a cardinal T square. And I'll let Kathy talk about the rest, but I did want to point out that her sun is at 13 Aries, and that full moon was at 13 Cancer Capricorn, and the US's sun is at 13 Cancer. So it's almost like it all converged, and that she was this kind of pivot point in many, many ways, right?
And
Mm-hmm.
another thing that speaks to that,
Mm,
even though we don't know the degree of her moon, it's in the
mm,
vicinity of 17 Libra,
mm-hmm,
one side or the other, and the US
mm-hmm.
Saturn is at 14 Libra.
Also,
So,
Louise.
so
Mm-hmm.
uh, she has a connection to what's going on uh, with authority and the legal system
Mm-hmm.
because of that. And another thing I wanted to mention is that Neptune at 29 degrees
In this circle I
Pisces,
put on, yeah.
right,
Mm-hmm.
is a sextile her Venus at 29 uh, Taurus, and
Mm-hmm.
this is it's like a sacrifice of a woman,
Mm.
an
And
opening
adding
for.
adding to the sacrifice energy, her transiting Mercury was almost conjunct her Neptune. This is.
Oh, and Mercury
Mm,
rules a vehicle. She was in her vehicle. There was confusion about
mm-hmm,
what was going on, what happened, and
mm-hmm.
Neptune rules images.
Yes,
So all the
videos.
cameras that showed up.
But also
Yeah.
Saturn was on her natal Mercury in Pisces. So that reflects both all these cameras and videos and people speaking, but also the intense gaslighting of people like Kirsty Home. You know, this is them just trying to pull the wool over everybody's eyes by, if I say it was happened this way, that's how it happened. But look at her natal Mars as well, 27 Capricorn, Uranus stationing at that degree, trying that. her south node was also on the degree of the March the 14th lunar eclipse degree. And for those that watch us nearly every week, we've said a lot of things from March are coming back. I don't know when she moved to Minneapolis. I know it's not that long ago. So, you know, it's almost like her soul moved to that place to be this kind of pivot point for us to change, And I don't mean she deserved it by any means. Of course, I hope nobody ever thinks I say that. But there is, these things show up that a person is often kind of in the right place at the wrong time or whatever, or the wrong place at the right time, or, and I always get the quote wrong because I'm not from here, but the shot that was heard across the world, it just reminds me of this event with these aspects. And one other thing before Kathy speaks to it again, and we're going to look at the US chart as well, is that Vesta, the state, the hearth, was still in Capricorn on January the 7th, and Mercury was still out of bounds, by the way, but on her Mars as well. So this is going to affect the whole country in huge ways, this event, I think.
All of these aspects to her natal chart are a way of explaining why this one incident has suddenly gotten in the news and that people are so riled up about it. I don't mean to diminish ICE has killed people. And there's something about this particular event and the unique circumstances of it that changed people's attention. And these different aspects to her chart indicate why.
And one other aspect that adds to it is that Chiron in Aries by transit is still at 22 degrees where it's stationed direct, but it's sextile her natal Chiron. And the story of Chiron really is kind of like the Christ story, the Jesus story of sacrifice for other people, sacrifice for you kind of thing. So I'm not saying she chose it or anything like that, but it's just a major turning point, and these aspects show it, as Kathy said. So
there's one other thing.
Yeah, we can.
Her Mars is at 27 Capricorn, which is right smack on top of the US Pluto.
It is.
So, which is in the house of what we value. So there's a link here of her use of energy, how she pushed herself forward, action at her, public action against her, really bringing up a lot of stuff about what it is we really value and about institutions.
Definitely. So, I'm so upset by her murder, but I do think we'll find that this event is going to be a big turning point. So, okay, so I'll stop the share, just find my software again, just get US chart up, and we're just going to finish looking at the US chart. And do you want the new moon chart around it, or
yeah, could we do that?
Yeah,
we looked at the
we did
woman last time.
All right, so tuning into that, I'll let you go, Kathy.
Well, I already mentioned that her Mars was on the US Pluto. The US Pluto is at 27 Capricorn. The full moon has Mars and Mercury on one side and the new moon, the sun and moon on the other side. So this is a new phase starting in our money, resources, values, institutional power, and at the same time, Uranus up there in the sixth house of how we do things on a regular basis. Uranus is sitting there in that activating square, I mean, flowing directly into that Pluto, and it's also exactly slamming, activating the U.S. moon. So,
Mm-hmm.
because they're both at 27 degrees fixed. So
Yeah.
this will, whatever is launched, whatever is starts to take shape at
Mm.
this new moon uh, involves people really waking up and
Oh
speaking up and
God, yeah.
saying, oh, no, 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 no.
And I want to talk about Pallas Athena again,
Please
the
do.
justice warrior. And she's the justice warrior for women primarily. I've just discovered a fabulous author called Nikita Gill. She did a TEDx talk in 2019, kind of talking about rewriting the myth of Medusa and Pallas Athena, because all these myths were written by men. But and she's kind of saying basically she did it as a form of protection, kind of putting Medusa's head on her shield and turning her hair into snakes. And I agree with that form. But anyway, if I could just remind people about that mini grand trine, the blue lines that were so thick, we're not going to see it on this, but this is all speaking to each other again, the 27, 28 degrees, but Pallas Athena is sitting on the US moon in a square to Uranus, and the moon is the people. Okay, so all these degrees, look at them, how they're speaking to each other. Wow. It's astounding, to be quite honest. It's just another representation of what a big pivot point this is, in my opinion, right? For all,
Strategizing women.
yeah.
This is not, I'm going to go grab my gun stash and run to the streets and do things.
Oh,
This is
this is like how, and that makes me think of something Kathy and I were briefly talking about before we recorded, about people shouting, "Why aren't the Dems doing something?" They are, but they're being more strategic for a change, and it's about more than just the Dems anyway. So, because if they just come out and just go, meh, 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 like Tim Walz said, the governor of Minnesota, if he kind of does certain things, they will make it about him, not this murder and not these events, and that applies to all the things. So they're kind of doing it more strategically and surreptitiously, I think. So.
And he said something that fits, that speaks to things we've already said, looking at the flow of aspects. He
Mm,
told people to go out, exercise their First Amendment rights peacefully, and to put their arms around each other.
yes, he did. Kind of makes me tear up because it's been
Me
quite
too.
the week. Oh my God. So go out, exercise your First Amendment rights, and put your arms around each other. And just know that we're going to be okay. I'm sorry, I'm going to tear up here. Kathy.
I honestly think, I mean, intellectually, I've been absolutely freaked out.
Yeah,
Emotionally, I've been weirdly, weirdly calm. I've actually texted people and
me
said,
too.
am I numb? Am I in overload? What is it? And
Mm,
what I've come down to is what I said at the beginning of the month, and I will repeat it. We are
mm,
building the exit ramp to
mm-hmm.
get out of this wormhole.
Yeah,
Things will be vastly different in a few months.
mm,
And it's rocky until we get there because
mm-hmm.
not everybody's on board yet.
No,
But notice how increasingly obvious everything is getting. And
yeah.
that is a good, good sign.
And despite my tears here, I have been emotionally calm. And it's the same calm, really, I've felt pretty much most of the time since the
Hmm.
election, since Kathy and I started doing this together. I know
Hmm.
it's going to be okay, even though it's horrible getting there. Yeah.
Yeah. So instead of, okay, give yourself a minute or 4 or 15 or
Mm.
whatever to freak out, to have, oh my God, outrage, whatever the latest news is that comes
Well,
across.
outrage is good. It takes action, right? So yeah,
Well,
yeah,
that's true, but
yeah,
my
yeah.
point in this is
Mm,
be human,
mm,
be emotional, and then take whatever amount of your own attention you can and funnel it into, okay, what is it I want?
mm.
And and spread this with other people. Don't just be you sitting on your couch going, oh, I wish.
Yeah.
Talk to other people about it. Actually do vision building. It sounds, this is woo. This is
Mm.
where I get airy fairy, but it
Mm.
works.
It
We've
does
been for
work.
years
Hmm.
creating the safety net, the communal
Mm.
safety net that is going to cushion so much of what happens.
Hmm.
So be with the people you love. Do things
Yeah.
that make your heart sing. Remember why you are alive.
Mm.
Please
Please do. All right, everybody. Till
take good
next
care.
time. Kind of hope next week's a little calmer, but I'm not sure it's going to be. So,
I don't think so either.
bye.
Bye.